It's really one of the saddest weeks that I can remember. More than 100 dead now in Texas, many of them children. And the congressman for the congressional district in which this disaster occurred is Chip Roy. He represents the 21st congressional district. I asked Congressman Roy to join me by phone today to give us an update. Mr. Congressman, I'm very, very sorry. I do think it is among the saddest things I've ever seen. How are you doing? What's going on in your district?
Well, Hugh, I appreciate it. I literally just got off the phone with a parent who lost a little girl who's, trying to manage getting a service set up. And we've been having those kinds of conversations and tough conversations with families 2 nights ago who are still holding out hope. And obviously every second that passes, they becomes more of a recovery mission than a rescue. But, you never know. We're still prayerfully holding out hope for some miracle. But at this point, everyone's just, trying to wrap their arms around these people, grieve, let them bury their loved ones, stay away from all the finger pointing. It was a massive disaster that was, look, it was extraordinary. Like once in a century is probably maybe not even doing it justice in terms of the rapid increase of water in a short area in a short period of time at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was the perfect storm. Doesn't mean we can't do better. Doesn't mean we don't need to review alarm and alert systems, but that can be done in a month. Everybody just, stop with the politicizing. Let's figure this out. Let's go clean up. Let's go find every girl, everybody we can, and then we'll regroup and figure out how to go forward.
Congressman, I was a land use lawyer long ago. We used to call these not 100-year events, but 500-year events, and you don't plan for 500-year events because they happen every 500 years. So it's a disaster. How can people best help? I saw that you posted on your own X account earlier the Salvation Army link, the community fund link. Is there anything that you think is doing a particularly good job down there for people who want to help the affected families?
Yeah, I think that is it. I mean, honestly, for the people nationwide, like just sending money to the community foundation there for the Hill Country, they're channeling all the money, trying to target it in the right ways. The Salvation Army, like you said, they're actively involved. We were intaking in-kind contributions, trying to take in like boots and gloves and chainsaws. But we were getting so inundated because people's hearts are so big that it was getting difficult for them to manage. So they've actually asked us to tell everybody to kind of pump the brakes at least for a couple of days, send in resources, send in money, and they've got a long list of volunteers in the state. But here's my big ask I've been telling everybody is remember them in a week, remember them in 2 weeks, because we're going to need, church groups, volunteer groups, people to come in here, help, because it's going to take, this is like a massive hurricane or an F5 tornado. That flood that came through, I mean, I posted some videos. You've seen pictures, how devastating it was. Probably the most moving was that video that was posted of those little girls from Camp Mystic who were singing hymns, singing Christian songs as they were riding in a bus, having just lost their friends and all the tragedy, looking at all the disaster going down the road alongside the river, which I was driving up just morning before yesterday. And so, God bless you. God bless everybody who's been paying attention to it. We're a great country, a great state. This is the best part of the best state and the best country in the history of the world. And I mean that and believe it. And I'm blessed to represent these great folks. I was in a taco shop yesterday morning, or maybe it was the morning before, and getting tacos for some people. And it was Sunday morning, and on the screen they were piping in First Baptist service, and everybody in the restaurant was like singing along with some of the hymns and stuff. These are just good people.
Yeah, Congressman, I've had a lot of people tell me they have the best job in the world until it's the worst job in the world. And I wonder if the last couple of days dealing with the parents of the little girls hasn't been the worst thing you've had to do.
So let me answer it in 2 ways. That experience is certainly the hardest thing I've ever had to do and continues to be as you engage people who lose loved ones. Our first responders deal with this every day. I'm just a politician. All I can do is try to represent these people, be a voice for them. That's all I try to do, and in everything I do. But you know what? These are the moments that actually give me hope and inspiration for the future in our country. Going back to those girls singing those songs, going back to Dick Eastland, who founded, and ran Camp Mystic for the last 50 years. He bought it in 1973. He was viewed as a grandfather to these kids. One of my staffers, my staff assistant, actually my ledge aide, he was a cook in that camp. He knows Mr. Eastland, or knew Mr. Eastland, before he passed away on the early wee hours of July 4th trying to save little girls. There's stories of a woman named Jane Ragsdale, and she gave her life, we believe, saving 4 or 5 little girls local active in her church, in the Presbyterian Church in Kerrville, and she was a camp director. These are 18 camps, a lot of faith-oriented camps, not all of them, but these are just good people, and this is the kind of stuff that lifts me up. It doesn't actually depress me. I'm very sad, and we will rally around these parents. But what you see the community doing in response, it's the best thing about the United States. It's the best thing about Texas, and certainly Central Texas and the Hill Country.
I will remember, Congressman, your admonition to remember them in a week, remember them in a month, remember them in a year, and to help out. I mean, I cannot imagine that wall of water. It's sort of like the tsunami that hit Sri Lanka in the early aughts or the early teens. And it's impossible to imagine at 4 o'clock in the morning what happened there. But I do see the pictures. I think everyone's heart breaks with yours, and I appreciate your taking the time to me today, and we will encourage our audience to go to the communityfoundation.net and to the Salvation Army and find the right donation and help out the Hill Country. Thank you, Congressman Chip Roy. I appreciate your taking time with me today.
God bless you. God bless all your listeners. Take care.
Thank you. Chip Roy is a wonderful human being. He has been down there round the clock, as has been the governor. And I saw Senator Cornyn there. I believe Senator Cruz is coming back from abroad where he was on a family vacation. But it really was. The film is continuing to come out. And I've never seen anything like it. I've seen tornado damages. I've seen hurricane damage, earthquake damage I lived with in California. When I lived in California for nearly 30 years, you got used to the I-10 falling down, the Bay Bridge buckling, and you instantly knew what it was. But for a river to swell that high and to move that fast down that narrow gully, for many of you out there, you'll know the term Laity Lodge. Well, my friend Dr. Mark Roberts was its operator, its director for many, many decades. He's retired now. And I visited Laity Lodge a couple of times, and you have to drive through a river to get there. Right? That's the Hill Country of Texas. There are small little rivers everywhere that have got 1 inch, 2 inches of water, and the road runs up the river. And, of course, the road closes when there's water, but you never expect a 500-year event to come along and wipe everything away that quickly. So if you will head over to the Caryville Flood Assistance page, it's over at, I'm going to repost Chip Roy's post, which says volunteers, shelters, donations, report missing persons, and donate. Communityfoundation.net. Communityfoundation.net. You'll be able to find the Texas Hill Country, and the same for SalvationArmy.com. You'll be able to find them. They often operate in every single city possible. It's just a horrific nightmare that's now over 100 fatalities, and no one expected that going into the July 4 weekend. But that is the way of the world, and it's a terrible thing, and all that people can do is respond and be as generous as they possibly can. Let me run down some other headlines for you as we begin our news day. Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump are scheduled to meet in about an hour and a half for the second time. They went late last night. Prime Minister Netanyahu wants a hostage deal, quote, as soon as possible, but he insists ultimately that there be, quote, no Hamas. He says his strategy will require some painful moves. Hamas commander Maran Mustafa Bajur was killed in northern Lebanon today by an IDF drone strike, but 5 Israeli soldiers were murdered by Hamas terrorists in an IED. Many others were injured earlier this morning, bringing the death count since the conclusion of the Iran war phase of this long war that began on 10/7. 17 IDF soldiers have died since the attacks on Iran began, mostly IEDs, not direct accounts. Hamas is no longer a fighting force. It's a guerrilla force, and they're not particularly well structured. There are tens of thousands of them, but they're kids, they're teenagers, and they think they're shaheeds or something, and they're busy doing all this damage. President Trump has announced the resumption of weapons sale to Ukraine. Very good. New York City real estate executives are gathering around behind Eric Adams to counter the rise of Mamdani, who has been every day another story comes out of Mr. Mamdani appearing in front of the statue of Christopher Columbus flipping the bird. New York is 8% Italian. They love Christopher Columbus. The Christopher Columbus parade has always been a parade of Italian excellence and pride. And so now count the Jews whom Mondami hates and the Italians whom he disrespects. We're up to 22%. Keep going. Add the Catholics in because Mondami is certainly not Catholic. And we will find ourselves a majority for Mr. Eric Adams. Noah Rothman is senior writer for National Review. Hello, Noah. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hugh. Good to see you.
Thank you. I've got to read to you an excerpt from this morning's news items by John Ellis. I don't know if you read news items by John Ellis, but it's the first thing I read in the morning because it's a comprehensive survey of the news. And he went and he found a piece by David Autor, who's with MIT's lab on the future of the economy. And he writes, Autor writes, we're in the midst of a totally different competition with China now that's much, much more important. We're not talking about commodity furniture and tube socks. We're talking about semiconductors and drones and aviation, electrical vehicles, shipping, fusion power, quantum, AI, robotics. These are the sectors where the U.S. still maintains competitiveness, but they're extremely threatened. China's capacity for high-tech, low-cost, incredibly fast, innovative manufacturing is just unbelievable. And the Trump administration is basically fighting the war of 20 years ago. The loss of those jobs, was not devastating to those places. It was not devastating to the U.S. economy as a whole. But if we lose Boeing, GM, and Apple and Intel, and that's quite possible, then we will be economically devastated. What do you think of that, Noah? Doomsaying or reality?
Well, I'm by no means an expert. I detect a measure of doomsaying in it. I don't necessarily think it's unfounded. These are valuable warnings. I mean, what you described there are the commanding heights of the economy of the 21st century. We're not talking about steel and utilities and the sort of stuff that the mixed economies would absorb and attempt to, shave down the sharp edges of economic life. You're talking about very high-end sectors that require a lot of research and high-end operators to use them. So there's going to be plenty of disruption. And that's one thing that people get really afraid of domestically, particularly those when those in the United States who talk about AI. They say there's going to be profound disruption. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to lose their jobs, and we're going to see rampant Luddism and the sort of the kind of action in the streets that's suggestive of profound economic unrest. And I think that can be overstated. In part because American manufacturing, people who work in American manufacturing right now are highly technically inclined, really well trained. There's very few low-tech manufacturing jobs in this country. In fact, we have a lot of open manufacturing jobs because they require a lot of intensive experience and training in order to get into that sector. Those individuals will be able to shop those skills in other sectors as well. If they don't excel in AI-dominated sectors, in high-end tech sectors. So I'm more sanguine than some of the folks who are predicting doom for our high-tech future. But as I said, I'm no expert.
No, I want to be a bit of a Luddite myself, and at least in the proposal. A second headline today from the Financial Times is U.S. universities face $1 billion revenue hit over foreign student fears. Turns out that the United States academic establishment collects $1 billion in foreign tuition. Doesn't give me the numbers of students yet, but this is every university aggregate. That's a lot of students to account for $1 billion. What do you think, Noah? Should our universities be inviting the world to come here ahead of Americans?
Well, not ahead of Americans, and I don't think that's stipulated in that, is it? That Americans
No,
don't
it's
have
not.
access to
I'm
American
just
education?
saying,
No.
If you,
it's not a
if you
zero-sum game.
deny,
It's just
if
a
you
failure
deny foreign
to imagine that this is a zero-sum game. We contribute to the education of the world, yes. We also retain a fair amount of that talent after we educate it. We should retain more. We should not be pushing the people who come to the United States to receive a top-tier education back to their home countries necessarily, unless we do so as we imbue them with the cultural spirit and civic pride of the United States and the smaller Republican system. I'd love to seed the world with that kind of talent. I joke that the degree to which my fellow conservatives talk about how corrupting the universities are, and they are, and the extent to which they pollute more commercial enterprises with the kind of cultural politics that dominates campuses. We should be welcoming every CCP official's kid to this country and then reintegrating them back into the Communist Party of the Chinese, as a subversive action. But that's just not the case. That's obviously a joke. Because America's top tier educational system, particularly in the STEM fields, I have my grievances with the humanities too. But when it comes to the STEM fields, we are very proficient and have very high-end sectors here, and our universities are one of them. And we should be proud of that, and we should integrate as many people who want to come here and have a high-end education. It is mutually beneficial. We get the money, they get the education, and they populate the world with individuals who have experience with the United States. That person-to-person connection can be poo-pooed by people who think soft power doesn't really exist. But it does. I don't think it's as nearly as important a factor as hard power.
Let me stipulate that you're right, that we have an excellent STEM society, and it's fine if the Chi-Coms come and go to our minors that are otherwise unusual. I just want to find some way of not offending people. But what if we threw the Chinese out of our STEM programs? Wouldn't that be mutually advantageous to us?
It could be, but these are also intelligence targets. I mean, insofar as we assume that a lot of these are individuals with ties to Chinese intelligence operations, as well as private enterprises and public enterprises that aren't necessarily tethered to Chinese intelligence, but are nevertheless assets. But the alternative is also true, that we are integrating a lot of individuals into this country who can bring back cultural attitudes to the Chinese that make conflict less likely. And we should want to see conflict between the United States and China never occur. We do not want a hot war with the Chinese. And so there's a soft power element to that, as well as a hard power deterrent aspect. I think the hard power deterrent aspect is far more important. It's the sort of thing we should rely on. But we should also not discount the notion that America's great and good efforts across the world to demonstrate the superiority of the American system, the democratic system, of the free market system. That's the sort of thing that we should proudly promote, and not hamstring ourselves by saying, by the notion that our own self-confidence is something that we should be ashamed of, or that we don't deserve.
No, I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying the trade-off is there are kids who do not get into programs at elite universities who are Americans, who are displaced by Chinese nationals who go back to China. So would a scalpel, not a shotgun, but a scalpel approach that says, if we have any places left over, we will take a member of the Chinese community from the CCP, but we're going to fill up, and as a condition of being a U.S. university, you are going to invite any qualified American to fill that job.
Sure, I could be convinced of that. That's not an especially controversial proposition as far as you've put it to me. And I think that would be fine. It's certainly the case, as far as I understand it, at state schools. But if you're talking about the Ivies, for example, where they shop for students, particularly those who are foreign, and pay the full freight. The other thing is that you can get subsidized student loans if you're a domestic American student, but you can't if you're a foreign student. You got to pay the full freight, which makes them very attractive to very high-end schools. The other thing is happening in education now that is percolating.
We've got to go to a break, Noah.
Sure.
Can I keep you for an extra segment?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because I want to know, how old are you, Noah? Are you 45?
I'm 43.
You're 43. I'm pretty close. What do you think the world's going to look like when you're my age, which is 69? Because I think maybe China might be running everything unless we get our act together in a hurry, and it does not make me sanguine. I want to find out what you think. Noah Rothman's with National Review. He's also one of the contributors to the Editor's Podcast, one of the must-see, listen-to podcasts out there. You should subscribe and like to this. While you were doing the break, Noah, I got a couple of additional statistics. More than 1,000 universities have students that 162 universities have more than 1,000 students from abroad. It is a big part of the business model for many universities, and 277,000 students come from China each year. That's the backdrop. Now, my big question to you is, are you sanguine about the future of the United States vis-a-vis China?
So I am. I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about it. We face some very serious challenges. And I've seen us rise to some of those challenges, but not nearly with the alacrity that I would like. That being said, one of the West, especially America, but in the West generally, one of our biggest strengths is our capacity for self-criticism, self-correction, and transparency, which is not something that totalitarian systems evince. And what have we seen from China in the last couple of years. In early 2024, Xi purged his military after the discovery reported in Bloomberg that corruption was so rampant in the PLA that its weapons platforms didn't work. And these system failures were not being reported upward. It was a big scandal when it was discovered, and it resulted in a purge of officers and cadres within the military establishment, which, as we know from history, doesn't necessarily go well. Combine that with the revelation that we had in May that the Chinese economy is slowing, and the Chinese don't want you to know it. So they are vanishing their statistics. The word vanishing is what the Wall Street Journal reporters used in order to hide from the world what we can all see with our own eyes vis-a-vis the productivity that's coming out of China. The elements of opacity here are the detriment, and some would argue the downfall, of totalitarian systems, particularly those that reject market economics. Market economics is the best pathway, the best mechanism for human flourishing, and it will always be the envy of the world to those who want to aspire to the American lifestyle.
They also remain very resource constrained. They are dependent upon imports reaching their shores from far-flung places, whether it's Indonesia or Africa or the States. So they're not Superman. Do you think we are organized, by organized I do not mean command and control, do you think we have prioritized the necessary inputs to make ourselves competitive with China long term?
In what way? So militarily or
defense,
economically?
economically.
Yeah.
Militarily, we're behind, but we can catch up in a hurry. But economically is a very big palette on which to paint. And whether or not we're ahead in supercomputing AI, I don't know, because no one knows the answer to that.
No, I don't think there is an answer to that. We're in an arms race. And there's a moonshot going on between the United States and China with the development of generative AI. And the nation that gets there first will write the rules. And all the while, everybody who's researching AI will experience immense productivity gains. We're already seeing immense productivity gains associated with AI. When it comes to economics, again, not being an expert, I would imagine that that will produce significant gains for the country that masters that technology and writes the rules and exports and has the IP. When it comes to militarily, our weapons platforms are the best in the world. We make more of them than our competitors. We export more of them than our competitors. We are right now far better positioned than I think a lot of our critics believe. And if the United States were to ever have to assume a war footing, real deal, the entire industrial economy dedicated to the production of weapons platforms and weapons elements, I think you would see a kind of juggernaut like the world has never known. We are the third largest economic manufacturing power on the planet Earth. We're one of the largest economies when it comes to the consumer base. We can support that kind of mission as sustained power projection in ways that no other country on the planet Earth can. That is an immense benefit, but it's not one that is guaranteed to us by God. It needs to be maintained and assured. And I don't see that happening with the kind of urgency that I would like to see it. But that doesn't mean we're in a bad place or on our back foot. Not yet.
I have a suggestion and a request, Noah. The request is that you stay one more segment, and the suggestion is think about this during the break. Can you stay another segment, Noah?
Yes.
All right. The suggestion is that you and Rich Lowry get together with the rest of the team and ask an AI ChatGPT to generate an entire issue of National Review using all your bylines. All right, so use everybody's byline, everyone who's normally in the book, just see what it turns out. And then when I come back, I want to talk to you about why you think we are qualitatively ahead in the military realm when I can't even find what the $157 billion in the One Big Beautiful Bill is supposed to go to in any kind of precision. I don't know that we're ahead, but I'd love to hear. I'd love to be encouraged, Noah. Why do you think we can match China in a military confrontation when I view it would be over before the shooting began, much like Israel and the United States overpowered Iran?
I'd like to hear how you assume that China would essentially win this war within hours. So your
hypersonics.
Yeah, they lead. They're doing very good in hypersonics. I don't know if they lead in hypersonics. Where China is making great strides is in disruptive technology, AI-enabled technology. They're focusing on very advanced platforms, drones. That's the sort of thing that where they're trying to achieve an advantage. I don't necessarily think I've never seen a military analyst suggest that the United States has a disadvantage in material terms, not yet. But where the United States has advantages are really profound and should not be underestimated. Naval projection, our capacity to project force in the form of our naval carriers is unrivaled. Our adaptability and innovation is pretty much unparalleled. We're learning quite a lot from our allies, rather, who are engaged in hot wars in the Middle East and in Europe. Our alliances are far less costly to maintain. They are not coercive. That's the sort of thing that can also be undervalued because of our alliance structure is so robust and predicated on a balancing structure, balancing against the adversaries in their regions, our frontline partners, as opposed to a Chinese strategy, which is far more coercive. And that gets expensive. Again, there are a million caveats and challenges. Steve Feinberg, when he was being confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Defense, said, one of the things we need to do is start to integrate a lot of the private economy, the private manufacturing sector into the defense industrial base so that we can ramp up production with the speed that we need to. We've seen shortages now in defensive munitions in particular, but also offensive munitions like 155-meter artillery shells. Because of the extent to which our allies need them. That tells you a lot about the deteriorating threat environment abroad, which is not good, not something we should welcome, and something we should
let me pause here.
For.
We saw in Russia when Ukraine used smuggled drones to strike their strategic bombers, and we saw Israel use smuggled drones to decapitate the Iranian leadership. And those are closed society. Russia and Iran are closed society. We're an open society. Do you think for a moment the Chi-Coms don't have that kind of capacity in the United States somewhere?
If they don't, they're certainly working on it or infiltrating it right now. I'm absolutely terrified of the drone swarm that attacks our unprotected long-range strategic bombers, for example, which we rely on more than the Russian, for example, nuclear triad. Yeah.
And there are only 20 of them. There are only 20 of them. And
yeah.
And
no,
they also have
there are huge threats, but we also underestimate the degree to which technology begets more technology that counters that technology. We could be seeing countervailing technology that disables incoming drone storms as soon as we get our hands around the threat. So it's just one of the straight line projections in this business lead you astray pretty frequently.
Do you think Team Trump is bringing in the Palantirs and the Palmer Luckies, and the next generation of defense tech at a fast enough rate, or is it still sclerotic?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any inside information on that. I would hope to say that the administration recognizes the scale of the threat. And I think we have evidence to suggest public and, Kremlinology, insofar as it's Kremlinology that we have to sort of pick apart the little bits of evidence that we have before us. But I think we can see that this president is interested in meeting the threats where they live before they become threats to American national security, directly threats to American national security. We have a couple of incidences now when it comes to Ukraine and Iran that suggest that this administration is interested in a proactive, extroverted presence on the world stage. And that's step one. Just simply acknowledging that we are a resident of the world is step one.
Do you think the Republican Party remains the party of overwhelming peace through strength and military prowess, or have the restrainers reached critical mass to the point that we're going to sit out any battle for Taiwan or the South China Sea?
I don't know how you can look at the last several weeks of this administration and say that the restrainers are in the driver's seat of public policy. They have been rebuked by this president in word and deed more times than I can count on two hands now over the course of the last 2 months. Now, this administration has some schizophrenic elements to it. It could return to that sort of form in very short order. But for right now, it's not the restrainers who are in the driver's seat. Rather, in fact, they're in the backseat getting lectured to, which is frankly, given the degree to which we're confronting threats that they don't seem to recognize our threats, is where they belong.
Last headline, Wall Street Journal, Trump to resume sending weapons to Ukraine. I'm very pleased by this. I'm very encouraged by this. What do you think, Noah Rothman?
I am encouraged, but it's very preliminary. Talk is cheap. I want to see action. We got some very disturbing reports out of Dutch and German intelligence over the course of the last 24 hours indicating that the Russians are deploying choking elements on the battlefield, chemical agents, in their pursuit of territorial gains. These are unconfirmed reports, but both intelligence agencies have lent credence to them. And that is a new stage of this conflict, one that would be very, very dangerous and suggestive of the increasing strain under which Russian forces are operating. We mistake our adversaries for juggernauts. They have their own weaknesses. They're encountering their own limitations. And we don't know how they will react when they hit a wall. We're starting to see Russia hit a wall. We might see China hit one too, sooner than we think.
All right, Noah, thank you for the extra time today. What do you think about my AI-generated NR issue from cover to the end? Every word.
I think you have to. It would be full. It would be full of lies. ChatGPT is a liar. It is job security for me, because everybody who outsources their thought processes and research to this tool ends up discrediting themselves and keeps me employed. So I welcome.
Well, I agree with you. I have never used it for anything. I won't even trust it for a quote, but nevertheless, I think it would be a fun thing to read. It'd be like a National Lampoon edition of the National Review. Noah C. Rothman, follow him on X. I appreciate the extra time today, Noah. I wanted to cover a few things with you that I normally don't do with someone who is not as well-versed in as many subjects as you are. So thank you for the time. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back. I'll give you the market report. Also bring you up to speed on what's going on. President meets with Prime Minister Netanyahu in about a half an hour. I don't expect anything to happen during the course of today's program, but when it does, I will tell you about it. I'll also bring you all the latest news as it occurs, not only from the markets, but from around the world. If you are in the market for a phone, and which American isn't, before you buy one and before you pick a consumer carrier, a cellular carrier, do me a favor and check your bill. I've made the switch to consumer cellular. The number for consumer cellular is right there on the screen if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, but I'll give it to you slowly. 800-221-7694. That's 800-221-7694. Now, if you're one of those people who do everything online, it will take you a while, a couple of clicks, 10 minutes in front of the computer to download your consumer cellular bill or your bill from AT&T or any of the bigs. And then you just want to go through and find out what you're paying for, especially you want to know how much data are you using. You do not have to sacrifice service for savings. You can have them both. All right, you can have savings and service. You don't have to pick one or the other. ConsumerCellular.com will give them to you both. If you go to ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh25, you'll get my discount. If you call 1-800-411-4454 and tell them Hugh25, you'll get my discount. That's $5 off of each of the first 5 invoices that you have with Consumer Cellular. Now, here's the deal. If you're 50 years and older, and that's their target demo, and you want unlimited lines, there's no better deal out there. Not that I'm aware of. $60 for 2 lines. Keep your numbers, keep your devices, keep your data, or get all new stuff. It doesn't matter to Consumer Cellular. What matters is that you come on over and let them prove to you by customer service and quality of connection and absolute reliability of service that they're the best people to provide it for you. You may not need unlimited data. You might only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. Whatever is your need for a consumer phone, use Consumer Cellular. Go to ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh or call them at 800-411-4454 and use my code Hugh25. And do it today. Remember, new customers get a $5 credit off their first 5 monthly invoices. Don't forget your relief factor. Got it right here. Now, I did not do miles today. Instead, I took a 3-year-old for 2 hours to the playground. Okay, what do you think is harder? 6 miles or 2 hours at the playground with a 3-year-old? I'm here to tell you that it's 2 hours at the playground with a 3-year-old. I'll tell you why. Pirate ship swings and slides are not made for old bones. They just aren't. But you got to keep up, right? 3-year-olds are pretty flexible. They squeeze through different things. And we got a pirate ship. We got everything at this playground. And my job is just to follow along. And it's a workout. But I'm fine. I'm good. Relief factor, it's better than 6 miles. I'll tell you that. 2 hours. And I loved it. She's a terror. She moves fast. Sometimes she just sits down and swings, and that's easy, except on your upper arms. But I want you to get relief faster. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or head to relieffactor.com. Find the starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com. I want to begin by checking the markets as I do every hour on the hour at 4 o'clock in the East every single day when markets have shut down. Brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com, a great sponsor of the program. They buy and sell gold at American Federal, and if you're buying gold at this very moment, and the market never sleeps, it's $3,314.70, down a few bucks from yesterday. $3,314.70. That's not the price you either pay or receive from Nick Gorovich, because American Federal operates on a very transparent system. You send them the money, they mark it up against whatever the cost is, they deduct their commission, which you've discussed beforehand. The more you buy and the more you sell, the lower the commission. So I can't tell you what the commission is. And then they send you the gold. That's who I bought my gold with in January. That's who I recommend you buy your gold with whenever you're buying gold. And I do believe in precious metals diversifying a portfolio. Maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 25%. I'm not a gold bug, never been a gold bug, but I do believe it is prudent to have a good store of gold on hand. What did the rest of the market do today? It's a mixed market. The Dow was down 0.41% at the close of trading. The S&P 500 was down 0.06% at the end of trading. The Nasdaq was up just a smidge, 0.04% at the end of trading. Gold was down a little bit at $3,314. Why nothing going on? Because people don't really know what to do with this economy. President Trump has announced a big tariff boost on copper, which has got people who use copper and people who sell copper moving in different directions. He's given our allies in South Korea and Japan until the end of the month to get real on the deal. In other words, he doesn't like the way that non-tariff trade barriers prevent things, for example, like American rice being exported into Japan. We got a lot of rice. They eat a lot of rice in Japan. Rice farmers are a big constituency in Japan. They don't want our rice in. That's not free trade. That's unfair trade, and Donald Trump is determined to end it. How will it end up? I don't know, but it will end up better for America at the end of this than it began. In the meantime, expect some choppy days on the market. Meanwhile, President Trump will meet with Benjamin Netanyahu for the second time in 2 days in about a half an hour. Last night, President Trump spoke about the Russia-Ukraine war. He's not very happy with Putin right now. Cut number 2.
Yes, just sort of turning back to Russia, if there's anything that you would signal about your displeasure with them.
Well, look, I'm very unhappy with them. There's no reason for this. It's turned out to be tougher, but it's only tougher. And I will say the Ukrainians were brave, but we gave them the best equipment ever made. We gave them the anti-tank busters that knocked out tanks. I mean, you just aim them in the direction of the tank and the tank is gone. We gave them missiles, the latest and the greatest. They were able to shoot down a lot of things that would have normally wiped out. Probably would have been a very quick war. It would have been a war that lasted 3-4 days, but they had the benefit of unbelievable equipment. And Europe gave them to. We gave them far more because Biden shouldn't have done that. He should have equalized. We should have given him the same, or we should have given actually less than Europe. It affects Europe much more than us, but we're in there for over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion, but still, Europe gave a lot. And I will say this, the Ukrainians, whether you think it's unfair that we gave all that money or not, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff. And a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it. They wouldn't have the courage to do it. So they fought very bravely. But we gave them the best equipment in the world. We make the best military equipment by far. There's nobody close. You look at other equipment from other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to buy our equipment. And that's why we're going to step up these contractors now that make it. And they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly. And we have to step them up, Pete, and let them make it at a much higher rate. Unfortunately, we have to do that. But if you look at our Patriots, if you look at our Tomahawks, if you look at our, what we do with tanks is you wouldn't want to be driving a tank. You would feel nice and secure. But they are javelins, they're called. And I gave them the javelins. Remember they said Trump gave the javelins and Obama gave them sheets, right? They called Obama at that time. Barack Hussein Obama, if you haven't heard, did a terrible job. But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of.
He went on to say some unflattering things about Mr. Putin that I cannot put on the air because of the FCC. He also, at the cabinet meeting, described the great success of the B-2 mission this morning, cut number 3.
We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room, and they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that. And they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast. They're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they, huh? But they dropped the loads, and literally they would hit. If you look at this table from here to there, they had a half a refrigerator door is the way to best explain it. Take a refrigerator door, average size, cut it in half. That was their target. They hit every single one. Then we had 30 missiles, Tomahawk, shot from submarines 300 miles away. Every one of them hit their target.
He's very happy with our American military. So am I. As I was talking with Noah Rothman last hour, I just want more of it. Prime Minister Netanyahu was at the White House for dinner last night, and he made remarks as well about Mr. Mamdani threatening to arrest him if he comes to New York City. Cut number 5.
The Prime Minister, the likely next mayor of New York City is Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, a vocal critic of Israel and of yourself, and has said he would arrest you if you came to New York City if he was mayor. Is that something you take seriously, or are you concerned about that? Do you have a response to that?
No, I'm not concerned about that.
I'll get him out.
Look, there's enough craziness in the world, but I guess it never ends. I mean, you have this is folly, and it's it's silly in many ways because it's just not serious. But
it is not serious, but Mamdani isn't serious. The Prime Minister continued on, cut number 6, talking about the mission against Iran.
Mr. President, again, real quick, on Iran, in your view, is the war between Israel and Iran over, or do those talks need to happen before you can?
Well, I would say that the best man to answer that is the Prime Minister. But I will tell you that, in my view, I hope it's over. Yeah, I think Iran wants to meet. I think they want to make peace, and I'm all for it. Now, if that's not the case, we are ready, willing, and able. But I don't think we're going to have to be. But I think Bibi would answer that question very well.
I think the partnership between Israel and the United States, the partnership between President Trump and me, produced a historic victory. It's an incredible victory, actually. It brought the greatest capabilities of the United States that are unmatched with the great capabilities of Israel and the army of Israel, pilots of Israel, soldiers of Israel, and the Mossad. And the combination of these two extraordinary capacities produced a decisive result. It set back the two tumors that were threatening the life of Israel, the nuclear tumor and the ballistic missile tumor, because they were planning to build 20,000 of these things and launch it in a country the size of New Jersey. And no country could withstand that. So what do you do when you have two things that are going to kill you? You have to remove them. With our combined effort, we did. But when you remove a tumor, it doesn't mean that it can't come back. You have to constantly monitor the situation to make sure that there's no attempt to bring it back. So we've had a great achievement, and I think part of the effort of consolidating this and ensuring that we don't have to repeat this is to monitor this carefully. Of course, the President and I are talking about it, our teams are talking about it, but there's no question this is a historic victory. And I think, as was said here today, this has already changed the face of the Middle East.
But it's not over in your view.
But I think
Already changed it, and I will bring back more from last night's meeting. They meet again in about 15 minutes at the White House. I'll keep you up to speed as events develop. I want to continue with excerpts from last night's conversation between President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House. They will begin meeting again in about 10 minutes. Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu on the Trump plan for Gaza, cut number 7.
To do something a different way, we're going to be open to that. But essentially, that's the way it is right now, yeah.
Mr. President, is your Palestinian relocation plan still on the table? Is there a plan? Has there been any progress in finding countries to accept?
Bibi, why don't I let you answer that question?
Mr. President,
Wait a minute, wait, he's got to answer the question.
I think President Trump had a brilliant vision. It's called free choice. You know, if people want to stay, they can stay. But if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will seek to realize what they always say, that they want to give the Palestinians a better future. And those who, and I think we're getting close to finding several countries, and I think this will give, again, the freedom to choose. Palestinians should have it, and I hope that we can secure it close by.
And we've had great cooperation from surrounding Israel, surrounding countries, great cooperation from every single one of them. So something good will happen. Brian, did you have something?
Mr. President, you've mentioned before.
Now, there was one surprising moment. I think it was pretty touching to President Trump. Prime Minister Netanyahu offered him a letter, cut number 8.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to express the appreciation and admiration not only of all Israelis, but of the Jewish people and many, many admirers around the world for your leadership of the free world, your leadership of a just cause, and the pursuit of peace and security, which you are leading in many lands, but now especially in the Middle East. We have great opportunities. The President has an extraordinary team, and I think our teams together make an extraordinary combination to meet challenges and seize opportunities. But the President has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, Bibi.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done.
That's going into the Trump Library. And the Trump Library is going to be quite the library. I don't know where they're going to build it, but it's going to be quite the library. Having been involved in a couple of libraries, I can tell you that one's going to be quite the library. The president has already this term stopped Iran's nuclear program, which was the most fundamentally destabilizing thing in the world. He brought India and Pakistan back to room temperature when it was getting very hot between nuclear powers. And he oversaw the signing of a peace deal between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Rwanda leadership, which have been at war for many, 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 many years. So nobody deserves it more, and nobody is least likely to receive it than Donald Trump, because the Nobel Committee isn't really about peace prizes, it's about moral preening and posturing, and there's not much I can say about it. Let me tell you about my sponsor, AndrewandTodd.com. This is a story from the Wall Street Journal. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I'm holding it up. First-time home buyers are MIA. Landlords are the winner. America's renter population has hit a record because fewer people can afford to get on the housing ladder. And it goes on to explain that affordability has become very, very difficult. Don't take yourself out of a game that you haven't even played. call my friends andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172, and they will begin to counsel you on what to do and when to do it. They'll find out what your income is. They'll find out whether or not you are renting now or owning. What do you want to buy? Where do you want to buy it? What your credit rating is? All very confidential, all very secure. They have the most secure situation in the world. And the key is Andrew and Todd are with a bank. They are a bank, Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They underwrite their own loans. So they can tell you pretty quickly whether or not you're going to be approved. And not only do they give you a qualification letter when you walk in the door to buy a house, they give you an approved loan. So you can show the home seller, I've been approved for the loan that I need to buy this house. And it tells you the interest rates. Now, this story is about how interest rates have been stuck because Jerome Powell is stuck on, I don't know, suspicious, doesn't like Trump. I don't understand. I don't read minds. I don't attempt to read minds. People who read minds are admitting that they're fools. But I don't read Federal Reserve Chairman Powell's mind. I don't like his policy. His policy has been to keep interest rates high for fear of inflation, and that's kept home buyers out of the home market. But it need not be you. You can get approved, you can buy a house, and you can refinance, and they will fall. There is an inflation in the United States right now. It's at 2%, maybe 2% and change. It's nothing like the Biden inflation because we did not do what Biden did, hose down the country with money that people did not need to spend on things they would never have thought they wanted until Joe Biden gave them Biden bucks. And before that, Obama gave them Obama bucks. And that's all over. All we're doing is cutting taxes so people can keep more money that they earn and efficiently expend it in the best way possible. That will bring interest rates down, and you will be able to buy a house, and you want to get in a position to do it quickly. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, call andrewandtodd.com at 888-888-1172. If you're a first-time home buyer and you're completely perplexed by this process, I mean, it really is complicated. All you have to do is call Andrew Del Rey. He'll talk to you for 2 hours. Todd Avakian will talk to you 1 hour. Together, they'll talk to you for 3 hours. They'll walk you through it. That's their business. andrewandtodd.com. And if you are a senior citizen, you want to get money out of your house because things are tight because of the Biden inflation, which has not rolled back yet and productivity has not caught up with it, and you're on a fixed income, you can take some money out of your house. You can borrow it via a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, or you can get a reverse mortgage, never make another mortgage payment in your life. It just takes money out of your house and charges you the interest rates against the equity that you have left. And it's a wonderful tool for the right people. What tool do you want to use? What mortgage approach do you want to adopt? Call andrewandtodd.com to find out. 888-888-1172. Just remember, this says first-time home buyers are MIA. All that means is that it's a buyer's market. If a lot of buyers are staying home, sellers are still trying to sell their houses, so you have an advantage. Take advantage of that house market. Do not bid a full amount for the house that is out there. Bid below it, and then talk to Andrew and Todd about being ready to finance it and, in fact, being able to show the seller that you have been approved for a loan. Call them at 888-888-1172. When I come back, I want to tell you about AI, something that Charles Krauthammer wrote, 15 years ago, that haunts me about the AI debate that just concluded in the Senate. NPR brings news that the Supreme Court has allowed President Trump to resume mass federal layoffs today. The Supreme Court on Tuesday lifted a court order that had blocked President Trump's executive order requiring government agencies to lay off hundreds of thousands of federal employees. The Supreme Court's order was unsigned. Justice Brown Jackson, appointed by President Biden, dissented. Justice Sotomayor did not. The order did not make clear how the other justices voted. It was an onside order, so it's pretty clear it was a very sound decision and one close to unanimity. The judge who had barred the layoffs from going forward was a Clinton-era appointee who has senior status. So she's an old judge. Her name is Judge Susan Ilston, and she had temporarily blocked the administration mandating mass agency-wide layoffs. And she was wrong, and the court said she was wrong. Doesn't mean the case is over. Individuals might be able to bring claims for damages, but the question of being able to downsize the federal government ought not to be a controversial one. I wrote a column for Fox News today that brought to mind the debate that's been going on about AI. And the AI that's been going on, Senator Cruz wanted to bar all states from doing any laws about AI for 10 years. And the Senate removed that provision. It made me think of an essay by Charles Krauthammer in 2011 that is included in his magnificent book called Things That Matter. The title of that essay is called Are We Alone in the Universe? Krauthammer quickly recounts the reasons why we ought not to be alone as an intelligent species in the universe, as well as the explanation of why we haven't, quote, heard from any other civilizations in our own galaxy. The answer, Krauthammer states, is to be found tragically, quote, in the high probability that advanced civilizations destroy themselves. Krauthammer credits Carl Sagan with the gloomy proposition, but Krauthammer sums it up nicely. The silent universe is conveying not a flattering lesson about our uniqueness, but a tragic story about our destiny, Krauthammer continued. It is telling us that intelligence may be the most cursed faculty in the entire universe, an endowment not just ultimately fatal, but on the scale of cosmic time, nearly instantly so. But no gloom and doom for Krauthammer, only clarity. Intelligence is a capacity so godlike, so protean, that it must be contained in discipline. This is the work of politics, he writes, understood as the ordering of society and the regulation of the power to permit human flourishing while simultaneously restraining our more Hobbesian instincts. Well said, Charles, as always. That's why I was interested in AI, and it worries me so. What Charles Krauthammer was saying is that all advanced civilizations eventually blow themselves up or turn themselves over to AI that gets rid of them. We'll find out. This is not AI. This is Relief Factor. I took it in hour number 1. I tell you about it in hours 2 and 3 every single day. I told you in hour 1 I spent most of the morning at a playground with a pirate ship, swings, and one of those whirligig things that the old guys have to push so that the young kids on it can go around in a circle until they throw up. It was great fun. But it's a challenging set of muscle memory. I haven't done that in 30 years or so. I normally delegate that to the fetching Mrs. Hewitt. She goes to the playground, and she won't be coaxed into doing stupid stuff. I am easily persuaded by 3-year-olds to do stupid stuff, like run around with the, whatever that device is. This playground is not nearly as lethal as the playgrounds of my youth, but it's still pretty lethal. It has a good pirate ship in it, though. But getting up the pirate ship hatch, which is made for a 6-year-old or a 3-year-old, is pretty hard for someone my age. But I got up. I did my stuff. I'll feel it tonight, but less so because of ReliefFactor.com. 4 ingredients that help your body's anti-inflammatory system deal with the minor aches and pains that from golf, skiing, water sports, running, trundling, or chasing toddlers around playgrounds. Relief Factor is perfect. Call them. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or head on over to ReliefFactor.com. Find the starter pack. It's very hard to miss. $19.95 for a 3-week supply. You take 3 packets on the first day, 2 on the second, 1 on the last week of each day of the last week. And by that time, the levels in your body of these natural ingredients are high and helping your body get along. So head to their website. You can call them 1-800-4-RELIEF or go to ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, and get the starter pack. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are meeting at this hour. I don't know if it's on the agenda or not, but a story broke this morning. A Chinese Navy vessel attacked a German Air Force plane over the Red Sea using the laser earlier today. No follow-up yet. Byron York probably has the scoop. Are you all over this story, Byron?
I am not.
I thought maybe since you were the all-knowing, the all-saying Oz, it might have caught your attention. Byron, earlier in the program, Noah Rothman was on, and I asked him a couple of questions about China and their general 30,000-foot question. Do you worry much about China in a conflict with the United States?
Well, I think there's two questions there. One, do I worry about conflict breaking out between China and the United States? And two, if such a conflict broke out, do I worry about the United States' ability to prevail? And I don't worry as much about a conflict breaking out. I do worry about the unpredictability of the conflict. I know, there have been lots of reports during U.S. support for the Ukrainians that the United States was depleting all sorts of weapon stocks and sending them to the Ukraine. Now, these were not weapons that would likely be used in a conflict with China, but it did show how fast you can burn this stuff in a in a really hot conflict. So I've worried for a long time that the United States had basically let a lot of its readiness and its ability to fight a war quickly and decisively go down. And I know you've been talking about ships in the Navy for how long? A long time.
Oh, long time. Yeah.
Long time. So I do worry about this.
I asked a couple of my retired Navy captain friends for a list of what the $157 billion in the One Big Beautiful Bill was going to be spent on. That's the defense dollop.
Yep.
And they didn't have a list. And so I would like a list. I also read this morning in News Items by John Ellis. I don't know if you get the newsletter, but I read it first thing in the morning. This comes from an MIT economist and geostrategist. We're in the midst of a totally different competition with China now that's much, much more important. Now we're not talking about commodity furniture and tube socks. We're talking about semiconductors and drones and aviation, electric vehicles, shipping, fusion power, quantum, AI, robotics. These are the sectors where the U.S. still maintains competitiveness, but they're extremely threatened. China's capacity for high-tech, low-cost, incredibly fast, innovative manufacturing is just unbelievable. And the Trump administration is basically fighting the war of 20 years ago. The loss of those jobs, was devastating to those places. It was not devastating to the U.S. economy as a whole. If we lose Boeing, GM, and Apple and Intel, and that's quite possible, then that will be economically devastating. The longer part is over at News Items. Now, that could be written by a TDS impacted academic. I don't know, but it seems like he's a qualified guy. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's a pretty smart observation, as a matter of fact. I mean, the controversy over Trump and tariffs has really been about we've got to get the United States more T-shirts. It's always been about theft of intellectual property, which is massive. All of the sort of things that the United States needs to keep itself healthy and defend itself. And you just listed a whole bunch of things that are in that category. I added keep ourselves healthy because we found ourselves when COVID broke out worried that we couldn't produce some really, really basic things like masks.
Yeah.
So these are real concerns, certainly in terms of the medicines that we make, the electronics, the really cutting edge stuff that we make. We have to keep making that. Just like we have to be energy independent, we have to be able to keep making this stuff, because if you're going to have a conflict with a really big country and the really big country happens to supply all the things that you need, you are vulnerable. I mean,
and the really big country turns out a lot of ships, and we don't. That's why I want to find out where the $157 billion go. I would like to open some new shipyards that produce rather low-cost, multiple design ships, as opposed to, we got a frigate up in Wisconsin. It's a great frigate. The Navy's changed its specs 4 times in 10 years, and so it's behind schedule and costs a lot of money. It does it every single time, Byron.
Yes, and we shouldn't be. We cannot make ourselves dependent on potential adversaries for the most basic things. Remember, years ago in the first Trump administration, Trump was telling Angela Merkel about the pipeline, the Russian gas pipeline, Nord Stream 2, now blown up, into to supply Germany. Don't do that. Do not do that. The Russians are not nice people. You do not want to be dependent on them to not freeze in the winter, because at some point they will cut you off and you'll freeze in the winter. So you have to. A great nation has to be independent, especially one with as many natural resources as the United States, has to be independent, and that's independent of China as well as anybody else.
Now, Byron, do you do a podcast? Are you in the podcast world yet?
I'm an occasional podcaster. I'm kind of a wandering podcaster. I haven't found my home yet.
You need to start doing one. I talked Ben Domenech into doing one a week, and it's great, and you ought to do one a week. But today I was listening to commentary, and Matt Continetti made a comment which I think is absolutely apropos. Trump and Netanyahu are not dissimilar from Reagan and Thatcher, who are not dissimilar from Churchill and FDR. They are the two leaders of the free world, and they act when acting is necessary. What do you make of the comparison?
I think it's a pretty good comparison, except, I think the struggles were greater, obviously, in World War II, and they were greater at the height of the Cold War. But I think in terms of the two leaders standing up for order and democracy, I think that's a pretty good comparison.
But I do think Netanyahu is on thin political ice. The Alliance of Tyrants has got 4 members in it: Russia, North Korea, Iran, and the superpower China. Iran just got crushed. North Korea can get off one nuke before it's destroyed, and Russia is bleeding out. Who would you rather be if you were betting from outer space on the West, which is the United States and Israel leading in the rest of the countries, or China's quartet of second-rate powers?
Who would I rather be? I'd rather be the United States in all this. More powerful, better long-run prospects, and actually right about things.
Do you think our political problems will resolve in time for that capacity to be fully developed? And by political problems, I mean Chuck Schumer said idiot things today. I'm not going to quote to you about West Texas and the floods. He's just a moron, and he runs one of the major parties. It just makes me crazy that we have morons running the Congress.
I think there's some terrible things going on in the Democratic Party. And have you discussed the Gallup polling on whether your people are extremely or very proud to be an American?
Yes, 92% Republicans say yes, 36% Democrats say no. Say yes.
But
36.
Go back 10 years. 2015, Obama is president. 80% of Democrats say they are very or extremely proud to be an American. Now that number of Democrats is 36%, less than half it was under Trump than what it was under Obama. Compare that to Republicans. 1990, 90% of Republicans say they are extremely or very proud to be Americans under Obama, and now under Trump, 92, virtually the same number. 92% say they are very or extremely proud to be Americans. There's a real difference in the parties here, in the very sort of basic structure of civic virtue and engagement, and that is pride and country. And Democrats, it's cut in half from what it was 10 years ago.
Byron, 37. What do you put that down to? MSNBC, TikTok, what?
Well, I mean, I think they've that you've asked me a big question and said 30 seconds. I probably couldn't get it in 2 hours. I worry that this is the party that has often, blamed the United States for things in situations in which the United States was actually the good guy. So you've heard blame America first.
It's
I
cumulative.
think there are a number of people in the party who do that.
It's cumulative. Thank you, Byron York. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh.
If you want to hear all of my Byron York conversation, you have to head over to my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt YouTube. Like and subscribe. I know some of you do not watch the YouTube channel. I would encourage you to watch some of the clips that we post there. We don't post many. We'll put up today's conversation with Noah Rothman, today's conversation with Byron York, not much else. But if you like and subscribe, you won't miss them on your YouTube feed. And it helps us with the algorithm. And it's my ask of you, the audience, to help us out, get it to 100,000 by the end of the summer. We just crossed the 90,000 mark, and I'm looking for 100,000. It's a subset of a subset, and I like it. I like those people who are highly engaged newsmakers and influencers. I like to talk directly to them. Let me talk to you about Americans for a Balanced Budget, a sponsor of my show. They have put together the website, StopHealthCostHikes.com. That's all single letters, Stop Health Cost, and then a plural, hikes.com. StopHealthCareHikes.com. Stop, I did it wrong. StopHealthCostHikes.com. StopHealthCostHikes.com. I've given them a hard time. I said StopHealthCostHikes.com, maybe the least felicitous phrase I've used in 25 years on the radio. Not quite 25 years. 25 years is Friday, I think. Maybe it's Thursday. StopHealthCostHikes.com. I've been doing this for 25 years. Here's what they're concerned about the most. We've got 77% of voters who support health insurance tax credits. People who buy their insurance over the state insurance exchanges get a tax credit. 70% of those people are Trump supporters. That's why when the next reconciliation come around, Americans for a Balanced Budget are going to ask both houses of Congress to please guarantee that the health credit tax credits continue. And the reason they want the health tax credits to continue is that no American gets sticker shock. Now, Obamacare wrecked American health care. It really did destroy it. And it's been repaired piece by piece by piece over the 10 years it's been in place. Now it is functioning rather efficiently. Part of that are tax credits for people who are forced into the individual marketplaces. People in the individual marketplaces might have 3, 4, 5 jobs. None of them provide insurance, so they have to go to the exchanges. The exchanges are expensive, but there's a tax credit for people who use them. We want to preserve those tax credits. I want you to go to StopHealthCostHikes.com to get involved in that. That's brought to you by Americans for Balanced Budget. StopHealthCostHikes.com. I hope you will be joining me on Hannity tonight. I'm going to be appearing along with Wesley Hunt and Scott Brown, replying to Stacey Abrams' absurd charge that somehow Donald Trump is responsible for the catastrophe in Texas. Really, she's out there. Some people will say anything for a little bit of attention, and she's attention-starved and has been attention-starved for 6 years and remains attention-starved. And so she'll say anything and do anything, and that's exploiting the death of little babies and little girls, and it makes me mad. But I'll say that on Hannity tonight, so tune in. Here's the story I wanted to read you from the Financial Times that I mentioned to Byron York early. I'm going to read you the whole thing. It's by Andrew Jack and Molly Taylor from New York. Dozens of universities across the U.S. risk losing an estimated $1 billion in tuition fees from new international students unwilling or unable to study in the U.S. as a result of actions by Donald Trump's administration. Tougher scrutiny of applicants, visa processing delays, immigration detentions on campuses and at the border are striking fear among both students and university administrators. You know, I don't think a lot of people crossing the southern border are going to college, but let's put that aside, which have increasingly looked abroad in recent years to fill places and generate incomes. Financial Times analysis of data from the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, shows 162 institutions in the United States with at least 1,000 students from urban research and with at least 1,000 foreign students. And they range from urban research universities to small liberal art colleges in U.S. heartlands. 3/4 of American universities surveyed in recent weeks by NAFSA, a network of organizations engaged in international education exchanges, anticipated a fall in international student numbers this year. That's nothing. That doesn't mean anything. That would represent a hit of nearly $900 million in direct revenues and $8.6 billion in total fees from incoming international students. So it's not just tuition, it's room, board, books, and everything else that they buy on campus. A similar 10% drop across all existing foreign students would create a $3 billion gross hit based on the Financial Times calculations. While the tuition data does not take into account financial aid, international students are ineligible for federal support and are likelier than domestic peers to pay closer to the nominal, quote, sticker price. making them pivotal to many schools' finances, especially at a time of declining admissions and federal research grant cuts. Now listen closely. Universities are seeking to compensate for anticipated reduction in foreign students by making renewed offers with additional financial aid to Americans on wait lists. But mostly they have now accepted places elsewhere and will typically generate lower tuition income than those from abroad. What do you know? An American pays less. What a surprise. One university in the Northeast said that the high share of Indian and Chinese students is a topic, quote, nobody wants to talk about, but it's keeping us up all at night. Okay, here's my question to you. Do you care at all that we are cutting back on the number of foreign students on American campuses? I'm kind of stunned by the number. I had Gus Sagastumi was in my freshman dorm. Bobby Stam was a good friend in my sophomore, junior, senior house as an undergraduate. Gus was from Nicaragua. Bobby was from Costa Rica. It was fine. That's all I can remember. 2 out of maybe 500 people in my freshman and upperclassmen dorms. 2. Now that number is ballooned. Why is it ballooned? It's ballooned because the Chi-Coms and Indian want to come here for our tech, our STEM, and it's ballooned because university administrators are taking care of themselves and not America. I got a question for you. Did you notice that the students who aren't coming from abroad are being replaced by Americans on waiting lists? Americans on waiting lists. Now, do you remember when Obama said, you didn't build that, other people built that? Talking about jobs and businesses that you built. Now, people are upset with President Obama because, in fact, they had put in the hours, they put it in the years, they'd put in the decades of hard work to build their businesses, and they weren't thanking President Obama for their business. Well, think about the average university. The average university in America has been built over decades, sometimes centuries, by individuals in America contributing money, time, labor, and tuition. They have built the university system. The university system is overbuilt, and there is no one with a brain who denies it. It is overbuilt. It is turning out worthless degrees and students who can't get jobs because they didn't learn anything worth learning. It's full of graduate students and PhD would-be students who are teaching obscure classes to 6, 7, 8, 9 people who are getting ready to be unemployed permanently. So the answer is, we can't take the international student who will pay full freight plus some. We'll take a student off the waiting list. Maybe that student wants to take computer science because that's what these kids from abroad want to take. Maybe that kid wants to take advanced robotics because that's what the kid from China wants to take. Maybe that kid wants to take advanced calculus or some other kind of math of which I'm unfamiliar that is only available in the United States. Maybe they want to take astronomy. Maybe they want to take astrophysics. Maybe they want to take nuclear fusion. I don't know. They're smart kids. They're not me. But I know one thing. We ought to have a preference for America, and we ought to have a cap for every university of 3 to 5% foreign students. Does that seem reasonable to you? Everybody else, they come from America. It's an American university. It benefits from the American tax system. We all subsidize them, and gladly so. I don't want to remove their tax-exempt status unless they violate the Civil Rights Act like Harvard. I want them to all be tax-exempt, and I'm glad we did not tax the endowments of students of colleges with less than 6,000 students, which the final edition of the One Big Beautiful Bill provided for. We're doing a higher endowment tax on the big universities with the big endowments. But we kept safe little schools. My question, my number is 1-800-520-1234. Do you agree with me that American colleges ought to be for Americans? And I mean overwhelmingly so. When I read that, don't worry, we've got a wait list here of Americans, but they might have taken a different offer. I wonder to myself, do they know what they wrote? Do they have any idea what they wrote? They obviously, Americans are second-class citizens in line because foreign-born citizens are entitled to, they pay full tuition. So they get to the front of the line because they're pulling full freight. They're paying the total bill, whereas Americans expect some financial aid, and sometimes they have scholarships from Rotary or from their school scholarship fund or from dedicated endowment accounts that can only go to America. There are lots of reasons why American kids are eligible. But ask yourself, why have we turned into the world's college system? What happened? Why did we do that? And the answer is because we grew university administrators and ridiculous jobs at extraordinary rate. They're not teachers. They're not faculty members. They're research scientists. Now, we need research scientists. Don't get me wrong. We want them in medicine. We want them in science. We want them in computer science. But we want Americans doing that. And we want American students learning the basics, grades 13 through 16, after they graduate from high school, not foreigners. So I'm kind of ballistic about this. The idea that kids on wait lists don't get into American colleges because we're taking full freight kids from the Chi-Coms. And they are Chinese students, and not only are they paying full freight, they're stealing everything they come in touch with. And I say they broadly, because if you have family in the People's Republic of China, you are not a free actor. You are not free to do whatever you want to do. So my number is 1-800-520-1234. Does that fact bother you? That universities have become completely dependent on tuition from foreign students to such an extent that Americans don't get in. They get tossed onto waiting lists because they got to wait and see whether foreign students, especially those from China and India, can pay their full way. Does it make you angry? Now, I'm out of that business. My kids are grown. My kids are out of college. I'm not competing against foreign kids. But this is a relatively recent development as people began to reject paying American college prices. When prices began hitting $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year in tuition, room, and board, they started going to JUCO and getting 2 years at the state university and realizing it was just as fine an option for their life. And as a result, the high overhead universities are dying. And the way to fix themselves is to close, not take students from abroad. Stay tuned, America. 1-800-520-1234. I'm asking people about that story from the Financial Times about foreign students displacing American students in American universities. Annette is calling from Michigan. Hello, Michigan. Annette, how are you?
Hi, Hugh. I'm a longtime listener. I called you when you were in the morning one time for the Salvation Army. Anyway,
thank you.
I live in Birmingham. My granddaughter graduated from the International Academy in Bloomfield Hills, magna cum laude, got put on deferred at Michigan. She got into Michigan State, got deferred at Michigan, and then waitlisted, and then now she's not in. But she did get partial scholarship at Hope College, so she'll be going there.
Well,
But
Hope College is a great
curious.
college, and there's
Yes,
always
it
an
is.
upside to not getting into Michigan, Annette. You got to understand, she's not getting into Michigan. So, but it is very frustrating, isn't it? She got, what was her GPA?
About a 3.8.
Okay, a
Magna cum
3.8.
laude.
She gets into Hope. She gets a half scholarship. She doesn't get into the U of M. How many foreign students do you think go to the University of Michigan?
Quite a few, and quite a few of the foreign students that went to the International Academy, it seems. But I think they're residents or citizens here. I don't fault them.
I don't
fine.
fault kids who are
But-
American citizens. I
No.
fault foreigners because paying full freight. And I do not like the fact that Americans do not get into American universities because foreigners take their places. There are only so many chairs. And they're not like it.
Yeah,
It's not
and-
like University of Michigan is poor and you've been paying for it for your whole life.
Right. Do you know my mother graduated from the University of Michigan, 1938, School of Pharmacy.
I'm not
And
going to
her
hold that
parents-
against her. We're not going to hold that against her. No. But
Yeah.
even misguided people who want to go blue, they ought to have a chance to become wrong about football forever. Annette, thank you.
Yes.
Mary in Georgia. How are you, Mary?
I'm well, Hugh. Thank you. I would like to take your premise. I completely agree with it, and I'd like to take it one step farther. I don't think that any schools who receive federal funding should be able to give athletic scholarships to students who are not American citizens. I've been watching Wimbledon and tennis tournaments for years, and I wish I had a nickel for every time they said, oh, here is so-and-so. They graduated from University of Georgia or University of Tennessee, and they're playing now not under the American flag. They're playing as under the Australian flag or the Canadian
Well, a couple of notes here, Mary. Number one, they could not possibly have graduated from the University of Georgia. Not many athletes graduate from there. But secondly, and more to your point, the entire USC water polo team is made up of Serbs. It's like there are some sports which only produce their best athletes abroad. But it does not in any way undermine my premise, which is American universities ought to be for Americans.
Correct. I will dispute your premise that water polo is an actual sport, though.
Okay. Well, you have not watched water polo. It is football without pads, is what it is. But Mary, I appreciate the call. God bless. Peter in Gilbert, in Arizona. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Hugh. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for taking the call. So I just wanted to chime in here. My son attended New York City Catholic, all-boys Catholic Jesuit high school, graduated about 4 years ago.
Which one?
Regis High School.
Oh, I know Regis. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So I was told by a college, now Regis, probably a third of those kids end up at Ivy's.
Oh, yeah. Very good school. Very excellent school.
And we were lucky and blessed that he graduated from there. I was told by a college guidance counselor, at the school, that he had never had a boy admitted to MIT. The entire time he had worked there. Not one kid. Now, again, Regis is rated the #1 Catholic school in the country, believe it or not, regularly. And you got 125 boys. That's it. That's the graduating class every year. Been around for 100 years. MIT.
Well, now I'm going to say it's no John F. Kennedy Warren, Ohio high school, but it's pretty good. And I can't believe they didn't get anyone into MIT. Do you know how many Fordham students go to MIT?
I don't. I wouldn't even. I'd have to guess.
Overwhelming number, and it's because they aspire to be the world's greatest science and technology university, and in many respects, they are. They have some competitors in some areas of advanced astrophysics and things like that, but it doesn't mean that they ought not to admit Americans. I don't. Not one kid has gotten into MIT. Not one from Regis.
That's what I was told. That's what he told me, and he told me that the prior year he had 10 boys, all at the very top of the class, all apply, and not one of them even got waitlisted.
Yeah, there's something wrong with it. And you know what? I'm hoping Trump and Linda McMahon change it. Hey, Peter, thank you. Todd in Atlanta, 1-800-520-1234, connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show, talking about Fordham students in American universities displacing American students. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I knew a guy that was med school at UGA, and he said he was the only American in the whole, class, all foreigners. And he said, a lot of them coming over here say that they want to learn this skill and then go back to their country and help their own country, but they never leave. It's a con job. And look at these universities that are so anti-American, anti-Jewish. They're proud of the Hamas Nazis that have taken over their campuses. Radicalism, Marxism goes back to the 60s. Universities in China, the Cultural Revolution. So the left uses universities to, as a petri dish to cultivate this virus that we're seeing.
That is a different issue from what I'm talking about, though, Todd. You're talking about indoctrination, and I think that Trump administration's all over that. I'm talking about finances. I think the universities that accept a lot of foreign students do so for their bottom line, and I'm of the opinion that if they can't make it with just American students, they shouldn't make it at all. Now, I'm not xenophobic. By all means, bring in 3 to 5, maybe 7% of your students can be from abroad. But if you're over that number, you are giving away places that ought to go to Americans, and Americans paid for your university. That's what I want people to. You paid for it, and it's being given away to other people. And if people, there are lots of rules that you can come up with. If you adopt more than 10% foreign students, you lose your tax-exempt status, for example. There are lots of ways to fix this problem. I just want it to get fixed. Thank you, Todd. 1-800-520-1234. Give me a call. Don't forget, I'm talking about foreign students admitted to American campuses. The Financial Times today reporting on the angst among university administrators that they face down the prospect of declining budgets because foreign students are being kept out by the Trump administration. Time for them to close if they can't make up the gap with Americans. Phones are kind of lighting up on the question of foreign students enrolled in American universities and whether or not there ought to be a cap and whether or not Americans ought to be turned away when foreigners are being admitted. Scott is calling from Pittsburgh. Who dialed the phone for you, Scott?
Hi, Hugh. Thank you for taking me. This is a subject that bothers me a lot. I have a son graduating at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh.
Good school.
Yes, I'm very proud of him. Internship right now at a finance company in New York. Very proud of him. But he had a difficult time there. I mean, he has a 4.0, but socially he had a difficult time at Carnegie Mellon because there are, guessing, 90 or 95% foreign students there. And
90 to 95%?
Oh, it's crazy, Hugh. That's a guess, but walking around campus, that's what I see. And although I agree with you that maybe they shouldn't be all admitted like they are, I disagree, or maybe, possibly, the reason why. I think that most of these students are admitted over the American students because of their qualifications and their academic abilities. I think that is because our focus here in the country has turned away from academics and it's more on sports right now. And that's a long conversation, but that's my general take.
Well, that's not a bad take. I'm not going to deny that. A lot more emphasis on STEM is placed in the primary and secondary schools of India and China than are in the United States school system. That being said, we can change both, and the best way to change the latter is to change the former, which is to put a cap on foreign students in our. And by the way, if we've got too many colleges and universities, shut them down. But I don't want to educate the world at the cost of the American taxpayer. I just don't, and that's what we're doing. And
well, I will say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but at Carnegie Mellon, there is no financial aid for foreign students, and it's very difficult for domestic as well. You don't get anything if you're under 100, unless you're under 150,000 income.
Wow, I didn't know that. Carnegie Mellon just went up substantially in my estimate of them. Nevertheless, I don't want them educated at the Chi-Coms. Are there Chi-Coms there?
Can't speak to that.
All right. Well, check that out for me, Scott, because that's the real problem. Thank you. Jerry in Seattle. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I think we ought to let all the foreign students that want to come here, but only if they'll take the useless degree courses like English stuff. Let them finance our hard sciences and everything we can use, and take that other crap back with them, home.
Mr. Mamdani, who is running for mayor of New York, took Africana studies at Bowdoin. So we can fill that slot with someone from abroad, is what you're saying?
Exactly.
All right, I'm with you. That's shrewd, Jerry. Well said. 1-800-520-1234. Let me tell you about myphdweightloss.com, sponsor of our program. Usually Dwayne helps me with this, but Dwayne is off breaking every rule in the myphdweightloss.com playbook. The myphdweightloss.com playbook is about eating smart. That is not the rule on a cruise ship. Dwayne and his wonderful wife, Mrs. Dwayne, are off the coast of Alaska somewhere. I keep waiting to see if a cruise ship breaks down off the glaciers, because that would make for a good story, right? I know it would be an inconvenience to the people on the ship, but it would make a good story and it'd be good for the radio show. But Dwayne is going by cookies and they have little plates of goodies spread all over the he doesn't drink, so he's not going to be at the bar like some of the people who plop down on the bar stool and stay the entire time during the cruise. If I'm talking about you, it's nothing personal, but I see you. And some people live by the cookie trays, and some people are up early for the chocolate croissants, and I'm guessing that's Dwayne. He'll have to come back and tell me what his myphdweightloss.com negative points are, but it is a great program. You don't need to take the fat shot for the rest of your life, which is what some people have done who have needed to lose weight because of morbid obesity, and I understand that. Their doctors prescribe it for them, and it makes them able to live again. But to keep that weight off, once you've lost it, you don't want to pay $1,000 a month for the rest of your life. Do consider myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. Don't try and lose weight alone. Do what Dwayne did, lose 50 pounds over the course of 3.5 months, keep it off for more than 2 years, and then go on a cruise where you can really test your resolve. 864-644-1900. I'll be right back. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. I'm going to take more of your phone calls on foreign students on American campuses, but first, it crossed my vision that President Trump had a cabinet meeting with Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, at his right-hand side. And I want you to hear this because it involves a clock.
I want to tell this, Marco pointed it out, I was going to leave the clock. So as president, you have the power, if I go into the State Department or Department of Commerce or Treasury, if I see anything that I like, I'm allowed to take it. Do you believe this? So I'm in Marco's, I see this gorgeous clock, grandfather clock, and there it is. I said, Marco. He didn't know about it. I had to read him the rule and regulation. I said, Marco, I love this clock. Look at it. It's beautiful. He said, what clock? I said, the clock that's in the other room is incredible, and nobody gets to see it there. Marco, I tried to talk him into it first, and it sort of worked, and then I had to use a little more. I said, I'd love to take that clock out and put it in the cabinet room. He said, no, are you serious? I said, Marco, I have the right to do it, Marco. And he said, all right, what the hell? So that's his contribution to the cabinet room. But it's, by the way,
it's a beautiful clock, by the way. I wanted to play that because funny is not everybody's way of dealing with stuff. Joe Biden was not funny. President Obama could be funny. Donald Trump is almost always funny. And that's a set piece. And it's got a gesture. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I'm going to play it again. Listen to the timing that's involved in this, because you can't see the insert of the clock. It's on X. But it is a very beautiful, very ornate, highly precision grandfather clock. And let's play it again.
I want to tell this, Marco pointed it out, I was going to leave the clock. So as president, you have the power, if I go into the State Department or Department of Commerce or Treasury, if I see anything that I like, I'm allowed to take it. Do you believe this? So I'm in Marco's, I see this gorgeous clock, grandfather clock, and there it is. I said, Marco. He didn't know about it. I had to read him the rule and regulation. I said, Marco, I love this clock. Look at it. It's beautiful. He said, what clock? I said, the clock that's in the other room is incredible, and nobody gets to see it there. Marco, I tried to talk him into it first, and it sort of worked, and then I had to use a little more. I said, I'd love to take that clock out and put it in the cabinet room. He said, no, are you serious? I said, Marco, I have the right to do it, Marco. And he said, all right, what the hell?
I have the right to do it, Marco. I have the right to do it. You also have the right, Mr. President, to shut down foreign visas for foreign students. Ed in Honolulu. Hey, Ed, how are you?
Hey,
hello, Ed.
Oh, I can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. So my daughter went to undergrad school at Oregon State, go Beavers, and a little different take here. She applied for grad school in several other, Western state colleges and was waitlisted, which frustrated the heck out of her. So what did she do? She applied to grad school in New Zealand and was accepted and graduated, and she's out there as a practicing veterinarian right now. I agree with you. I have little sympathy for these American colleges that are, bypassing American students to accept all these foreign guys in our own country.
And by the way, Ed, I think her move is a very strong move because Americans are a valued commodity around the world, and not a lot of us want to go abroad except for a semester or a year. But if you go get your degree at a university, like getting into vet school in the United States is pretty much impossible.
It's impossible. Yes, and that's why, coming from here, she'd already gone to a undergrad school and all that, met a bunch of other criteria. They were more than happy to accept her. And so she attended Massey University, got out with flying colors, and she's a working vet today. And I'm super proud of her, and I would encourage other parents to look into these options. And at the time, New Zealand, the exchange rate, it was a lot cheaper for her to go there for 4 years than it would be at American college anyway.
Is she practicing in the United States, or is she practicing abroad?
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is. Very,
She's
very good.
Working here in Honolulu as a doctor and loves it, and she's living her dream.
Did she mind not having any football when she was an Oregon Beaver?
Here we go.
Just pointing out.
Civil War, Eugene.
Just pointing out that some teams were not invited to join the Big Ten, and one of them was the Oregon State Beavers, but we love them anyway, Ed. Thank you, my friend. Good to talk to you. Monica in Jacksonville, Florida. Hi, Monica.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
I teach at a Florida public institution, and I really think it's all about money. I try not to I'm not a PhD, and I try not to get involved in what I call the administrivia, but there's been a big move for creating more STEM programs. I believe they get more money, and I'm not sure if that's from the state or from the federal government, but somehow the school gets more money for STEM programs, and especially at the graduate level because the tuition is a lot higher, and they don't care where the money they don't care where the students come from. I mean,
they want the money. They got to keep their jobs funded, and Monica.
Exactly. And a lot of these administrative people are very highly paid. It's a big money game. I'll just say that. I really feel very strongly that it's a big money game. It's all about protecting salaries.
It is, and it's not going to last, and I hope Donald Trump brings an end to it. Thank you, Monica. Jeff in Dallas, you got about 30 seconds, Jeff.
Yeah, this is tangential. It's very similar, not the same. I went to Ohio State. My daughter went to Ohio State, and Ohio State Medical School, one time, up to 40% of the slots were saved from students from California. Now, whether the number was 20 or 40 that was told to me by medical students, the point is I spent my whole life paying taxes in Ohio. My kids spent their lives, paying taxes in Ohio, and yet when you send your kids, many of the slots are going to students from other states.
California is the worst. You can't get into a UC if you're a California kid with a 4.0, and it's ridiculous. Jeff, thank you. Go Bucks. Good to hear you from a Buckeye to close out the hour. I'm in the ReliefFactor.com studio, and I'm reminding you to take your Relief Factor before you head out the door on your commute home. If you're in the Central or Mountain District, if you're already home and you're about to have your cup of coffee and you forgot it this morning when you got up, don't forget to take it. Keep the levels up. Keep feeling good. I did not get my miles in today. I was assigned a 3-year-old, so I spent 2 hours at the playground. I'd have rather done 10 miles. Because that involves a great deal. There's a pirate ship involved, and a pirate ship built for those between 2 and 6 is not exactly sized for a 5'11" grandpa, and a 3-year-old doesn't move at the speed the grandfather does. And the grandfather is always worried about one thing, which is falling from a great height. So they're always zipping around and moving quickly. And I should feel it tomorrow morning, but not because of Relief Factor. I have confidence in Relief Factor. I took it in the first hour. Finally got my back right. And then I get assigned the 3-year-old for a couple hours. It was great fun. I'm just saying, if you're in a similar situation, call Relief Factor at 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. And maybe you have one minor pain that comes back again and again, maybe at intervals. And it might be plantar fasciitis. It might be a wrist. It might be arthritis. Whatever it is, try Relief Factor. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. The starter pack is $19.95. It's less than $1 a day for a 3-week trial. 3 packets a day for the first week, 2 for the second week, 1 for the third week. Then you've got your levels up, and you'll decide, hey, this stuff is pretty good. I'm going to go for round 2. Or just go find the starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day, at their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Joe in Pasadena, you get the last call. Joe, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Hugh. Glad to be on here. I have a friend that worked at the admissions department at Caltech. The Chinese used to send their students over here, and then they'd stay. But now they hold their families hostage.
Of course.
The Chinese students come to Caltech. They learn all about bioweapons manufacturing, how to scramble genetic codes, and go back to China. All the grad students at Caltech are free.
I'm telling you right now, if Donald Trump and Linda McMahon, the president and the secretary of education, get one thing done, it will be a comprehensive review who is attending our universities, who is sending them, what are they paying, and which Americans are not getting that opportunity to excel. Because everybody's admitted means someone who's not admitted. There's a next person at the door. If that next person is American or a person other than a Chi-Com, let them in, send the Chi-Coms home. We are in a worldwide competition, and we have to take it seriously, and we have to take it seriously now. Joe, thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. 2 days without Dwayne. I think the show's just cooking. I think the show's absolutely cooking. Yep, Dwayne, dark as can be, right there. We're showing you the picture on the Salem News Channel.